What are some of the best cheap enthusiast whiskeys for the holiday season? I'm Jeff, this is G Whiskey, stick around. Alright, so I want to start off by saying that I have folded my laundry and I put it away. A lot of you noticed a pile of pants and some laundry behind me in the last video. And I want everyone out there to know that that was intentional. It was a design choice. And listen, I don't blame you guys if you didn't know that, if you're not following all the recent trends in the interior design world, but that trend is called the lived-in look. And while I did enjoy experimenting with that look in that last video, ultimately my team of set designers and myself decided not to move forward with that aesthetic, so I put my pants away. Anyway, moving on to today's video. This video is a follow-up to a video I released last week where I talked about 10 cheap whiskeys that enthusiasts love. But the thing is, there's a lot of great, affordable enthusiast whiskeys out there, and you're not going to fit them all into a single list of 10. And of course, I got a lot of comments saying, how come you didn't include this one or this one or this one? So I kind of felt obliged to give you guys a follow-up video, so we're doing 7 more today. Once again, this video works as a gift-giving guide if you're buying whiskey for an enthusiast over the holiday season, but you don't want to spend too much, or maybe you're already an enthusiast, in which case you can use this video to rediscover some classics. Everything on today's list is going to be a single malt Scotch whiskey, so no blends, no bourbons, no world whiskeys. And for every whiskey that I put forward here, I'll give you 3 words that I feel best describe the stuff. And while not every single whiskey on this list is a personal favorite, I can vouch for each and every one of them. And let me tell you something, if a whiskey gets the coveted G Whiskey seal of approval, that's a pretty big deal because that means, well, nothing, absolutely nothing. It means a guy on the internet likes a bottle. But in my defense, I'm not just any old guy on the internet. I'm a guy on the internet who drinks a whole lot. I don't love how that sounded out loud. Let's try that again. I'm not just any old guy on the internet. I am a seasoned enthusiast who advocates for moderation. And definitely didn't drink like a million whiskeys at a whiskey show yesterday. So much so that I did not feel like waking up today, and I definitely didn't feel like shooting a video today. But I decided to go through with it anyway because this video is going on my YouTube channel, and the YouTube channel is the only way that I can get enough attention from strangers to feel some sense of validation and feed my fragile ego. So anyway, just like last week's list, this list is not in any order of preference. It's in descending order of price, with number 1 being the cheapest. And I gotta say, this week's number 1 is both cheaper and better than last week's number 1. So that was definitely a glaring omission on my part. And in fact, there were a few of those. Our prices here range from 50 down to 35 US, and these are prices out of the big online UK retailers. A lot of markets will be more expensive than these prices, but if you're ordering in the UK and you're not paying shipping, these are what they go for. And as always, I do have a mystery port in the glass. This is a divisive whiskey. It's not for everyone. It's an unpeated Islay whiskey that I've previously named as Whiskey of the Year. So that's your hint. Good luck guessing. Let's not waste any more time. Let's jump into our list. In the meantime, if you'll kindly leave a like down below, that'd be greatly appreciated. Okay, so coming in at the back of this list at $50, I've got Benromach 10. Now, I'll admit, for me, it's not a love, but it is a like. But I know so many enthusiasts that absolutely adore this whiskey, and it definitely is a crowd pleaser. This stuff is 43% ABV, exclusively matured in first fill casks. They don't tell us what kind, but it's most certainly bourbon and sherry. And it's got that all-rounder appeal. I would describe this stuff as sherried, gently peaty, and rounded. And this is just one of those very easy to like whiskeys. Granted, on paper, it might sound a little bit generic, but Benromach does have a unique and genuinely delicious profile, and I think it's a great pickup at $50, which is why it's number 7. Benromach 10. Alright, so number 6 and number 7 are actually a tie because both bottles come in at $50, but I will admit that I like number 6 a little bit more. This one is heavier on the peat, and it doesn't hurt that it's got a higher ABV. This one is Ledaig 10. This one comes in at 46.3% ABV. They don't share what casks are used, but it's got to be mostly bourbon, if not all, a good chunk of it first fill, but we're not sure. And I would describe this whiskey as smoky, rich, and cheesy. Now, between this one and the Rioja that I mentioned in last week's video, personally, I do prefer the Rioja, but that one is very cask driven. So if you're not into cask forward whiskeys, if you want something that we could describe as more honest, this would be a good option for you. I love the whiskey myself. It's wonderful stuff. Comes in at number 6, Ledaig 10. Next up, and coming in at 49 US, we have a whiskey that I don't actually love. I do like it, but I don't love it, but so many enthusiasts go wild for this stuff. And this list is not about me or my personal preference, it's about whiskeys that are popular among enthusiasts, so this one needed to be included. This one is Glen Garioch 12. This is 48% ABV. We have bourbon and sherry casks in the mix. I would describe this whiskey as herbal, fruity, and musty. And credit where it's due, this is not a boring or generic whiskey. It definitely does its own thing. And even though it's not a favorite of mine, we do get that character, we get a good price tag, we get a good age statement, and a lot of people really love this stuff. So it did make sense to include it here. Glen Garioch 12 and number 5. Next up at number 4, we've got another whiskey that I'll admit not a favorite of mine once again, but as I said, this isn't about me. This comes in at $42, and for that price, it is a great deal. I'm talking about Deanston 12. This stuff is fully crafted, 46.3% ABV, non-chill filtered, natural color. I believe it's mostly, if not fully, bourbon matured, and I would describe it as vanilla, cereals, and florals. Personally, I always find a cologne type note in here, which kind of puts me off it a little bit, but I seem to be the only one. No one else seems to talk about it, so don't take my word for it. Regardless, good price and very popular stuff. Deserves the mention. At number 4, Deanston 12. Next up is number 3, and let's keep in mind that this is in descending order of price. It's not in order of preference, because if it was in order of preference, this bottle would be number 1 for me. Absolutely love this stuff at $40. It's a steal. Glencadam 10. This gives us 46% ABV. In terms of casks, I don't think they tell us, but it's got to be mostly, if not fully, refill bourbon. This is a whiskey where the distillate definitely sings. I would describe it as bright, vibrant, and floral. And really, this has just always been one of my favorite budget single malts. That remains the case to this day, and it's a great option if you're okay with a more delicate style of whiskey, which I am. So coming in at number 3, my personal favorite, Glencadam 10. Coming in at number 2, we've got my second favorite whiskey on this list, so the number fits. This is not a whiskey that's super popular among enthusiasts, but I think it should be. Comes in at $38 US, Arran Barrel Reserve. Now this one always gets overshadowed by the 10-year-old, which does make sense because the 10-year-old gives us more complexity, more richness, it's got the age statement, and it's got a higher ABV. The 10-year-old's 46%, this one only gives us 43%. But it is more distillate driven, I happen to like that, and I would describe it as crisp, bright, and clean. This is very delicious, albeit straightforward stuff. It's relatively young with a pretty zippy character. For me, it does lean more summer, so probably not the best time of year to be recommending it. But if you don't mind something like the Glencadam that's kind of bright and clean and delicate, this is another great option. Comes in at number 2, Arran Barrel Reserve. Okay, so we made it to number 1. This is the cheapest whiskey on this list, and it comes in at just $35 US, and for that, it's most certainly worth it. I've got AnCnoc 12. Now, this is an interesting pick because a lot of enthusiasts do prefer whiskeys that are higher in ABV. This one comes in at 40% ABV. It's the lightest whiskey on this list, and for some reason, it still gets a pass from a lot of enthusiasts. Then again, I'm sure the price tag probably has something to do with that. I would describe this whiskey as clean, honey, and cereals. And even though it is at 40%, even though it is on the lighter side, it does offer up an interesting experience. It is a whiskey with some character. And for $35, you really cannot go wrong. So, number 1, AnCnoc 12. Alright guys, that was the video. I hope you enjoyed it. Keep in mind, it is all just opinion, and there are a lot of very good budget-friendly whiskeys out there, and I'm sure I can't fit all of them in just 2 videos. So anything that I missed, anything that should have been included, feel free to let me know that down below in the comments. Finally, if you stuck around to find out what the mystery pour in the glass is here, I mentioned earlier that this is an unpeated Islay whiskey that I have previously named as Whiskey of the Year. What I'm drinking is Laddie, the Classic Laddie. This was my 2022 Whiskey of the Year, and I think it's beautiful stuff. It's 50% ABV. It is pretty distillate driven, and it's a wonderful distillate, but depending on what batch you get, you might get anywhere from a little bit to a fair amount of wine cask influence in there as well. Decent complexity and just brimming with character, and for only $50 US, absolutely worth it. So highly recommend this stuff, and that brings us to the end of the video. Guys, thank you so much for watching. If you want to help out, I do have both Patreon and PayPal linked down below. That helps keep the channel financially sustainable and independent. And I forget the rest of the spiel. Anyway, we'll see you in the next video. Bye, guys.